Hello and welcome to the podcast for the School of Politics and International Affairs at the University of Illinois Springfield. I'm your host today, Craig. I'm an online coordinator for the College of Public Affairs and Education here at UIS, and I'm excited to continue our series of speaking with faculty members. And so today, we actually get to talk to the newest faculty member of UIS and of the college and of the school, and that is Dr. Brandon Bolte. And he is coming to us. This is his first year out of his dissertation, so really one of those first stops in his educational career and teaching. And he just graduated with his PhD from Pennsylvania State University. He is one of our specialists in international relations, and he particularly looks at political violence and conflict, and specifically more into civil wars, but also the broader sense of conflict and political violence throughout the world and how that could potentially lead to overall peace. And so it's really fun to get a chance to talk to him because, of course, we just spoke to Dr. Magic Wade, who really focused more on the States. And now we get to expand that to the whole world and looking at international relations. And that's exactly the type of diversity that you'll find within the program here at UIS. We do have a lot of different faculty focusing on a lot of different aspects of political science. And so I'm excited to talk to Dr. Bolte today. And in fact, I'm going to get right into it. And then on the opposite side of the interview, I'll mention how you can get a hold of me if you have any questions about the program. So here he is, Dr. Brandon Bolte. So excited to introduce to our audience of prospective students and other faculty members and also alumni to the program, Brandon Bolte, which you happen to be the newest faculty member. That it's fun because last month I had an opportunity to talk to Magic Wade, and of course she is now the director of the School of Politics and International Affairs, and now I get to talk to the newest member of the School of Politics and International Affairs as well. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. I'm really enjoying my first semester here at UIS. The department's great. The faculty are all great. The students are really fun to work with, and so and thanks for inviting me on the podcast. I can't wait to talk to you.
Absolutely. And so what I think is fun as well is that you are probably the most closely connected to our students in that you were just a student yourself. So you graduated in 2016 with your bachelor's degree, which is kind of fun, by the way. I don't know if you had any interactions with her, but our chancellor came from Truman State University. I believe she probably was like your provost at the time or something like that. So that's kind of fun too. But then you also went out to Pennsylvania and pursued your MA. And then also ultimately your PhD out there as well. So can you talk about your kind of experience or just how you came to political science as a student and decided to go on to get that PhD?
Yeah, I'd love to. So when I was first entering college, as you mentioned, I went to Truman State University, which is in Kirksville, Missouri. It's a smaller institution. That's kind of what I was looking for. I didn't want, as an undergraduate experience, I didn't want to go to kind of a big R1 institution because I wanted to have smaller class sizes. I wanted to have close relationships with my professors, which is another great feature of UIS. So I like to be able to give back in that way to that mission that I enjoy. But in any case, I went to Truman State. I started taking a couple of classes. You know, I had a professor that I really liked who taught international relations classes. Growing up, I had always been interested in kind of politics, at least in the current event sense. But I was going to go to school actually to get like a pre-med degree, go into medicine. And within the first semester, I thought to myself, well, I like these political science classes I'm taking. I was thinking about doing it as a minor or something, or as a for fun major, as I thought of it in my own brain. And I didn't really like biology. I didn't really like chemistry. And eventually I thought, well, if I have this other major that's my for fun major, why don't I just do that one? So I kind of stuck with it. I took some courses that I liked in international kind of security. And then there were just some specific lectures and discussions that we had in some of those classes that just really resonated with me. I started learning about political science as more than just talking about current events, but the social scientific study of politics. I thought that was enlightening. I wanted to be a part of that. And then from there, I studied abroad. I spent a summer in Israel and the West Bank and other kind of places in the Mediterranean as well. So it wasn't a whole long kind of stint, but I did get to kind of experience a little bit from the outside some discussions about conflict, experiences with conflict and political violence. And from there, I kind of took off. I was just fascinated by international conflict and civil wars, so conflicts within countries as well. So from there, I took off. I wanted to learn quantitative methods to study these kinds of things. So I went to Penn State University, which has a strong quantitative methods training program, as well as great faculty who know a lot about wars, conflicts, and now I'm here.
That's fantastic. I mean, as an academic advisor, my heart is growing 3 times larger in that you realized that maybe there was a change of major there or a change of heart and perspective from when you entered college. And so that is something that I talk to students about quite a bit, that really the benefit of having those first couple of years of general education type courses is to really open up that perspective and be able to say, okay, you know what, maybe I'm not necessarily planning my career for the next 50 years, but what's that first career look like after college? What am I really interested in doing? Is it going somewhere like medical school, or is it really following sort of more your passions and seeing where that might lead you? So it's really cool that you were able to do that. I had a similar experience actually in our graduate programs here. I was one of those very rare people that changed their major, not in their BA, but in their MA, because I actually had been told, maybe you should diversify your degrees, whatever the case may be. And so I had already gotten my BA in political science. And so when going into the master's program, I started in the MPA program here in public administration. But I really felt like you did, that the fun classes, the classes where my heart was really in it, was still in those political science classes. And so I was able to shift over into that major, and the rest is kind of history from there. You also talked about your study abroad experience. And I wonder, you are someone that is interested in things like international relations and conflict, and you are primarily focusing more on your civil wars and things like that throughout the world. But I am wondering about current conflicts that we are experiencing, and if maybe that trip or that study abroad program made you approach that differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely opened my eyes. I mean, there's something to be said about, first of all, to any student who's interested and has the ability to do so, if you have a chance to study abroad, the benefit of studying abroad is that it just broadens your horizons so much, because you get to experience kind of the stories of other people. And that's really important, I think, to just developing yourself intellectually. I was an undergrad when I did that study abroad trip, and the purpose of it was actually to kind of explore kind of some philosophy and religious histories in different parts in the region. But we also, as part of this experience, got to work on an archaeological dig site in the
Cool.
Golan Heights, which was really, really interesting, fun to do. I found an old Roman coin. So that was kind of a neat experience. But the other part of this was that, I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to people in Israel. I spoke to people in the West Bank and got their stories. And one thing that I think is important for people to know, especially given the conflict that's going on right now, is that there are so many people who are interested and want peace, right? Peace is something that so many people want, despite the explosions and the violence and the horrors that we see on TV. And it's really important to make sure that we recognize not only the people who want peace, right, whether they be Israeli or Palestinian, but also not aggregate, right, everybody together. Just like not all Americans have the same beliefs, right? Not all Palestinians have the same beliefs. Not all Israelis have the same beliefs, right? And those are important nuances that are sometimes overlooked when we watch the news and we just see kind of the really, really scary stuff. There were really powerful stories that I heard, right, from some individuals that I was able to kind of speak to, who are doing incredible work to kind of promote peace and reorient feelings of anger and frustration into kind of productive artistic endeavors. And these are really kind of beautiful things that are often, again, overlooked by the horrors that we often see on TV. But I do think too that once, if you take either my courses or you start studying kind of the political science behind conflict, whether that be conflict within countries or conflict between them, my hope is that you can also get a broader perspective and understand why these wars happen, right? And so I'm teaching a graduate course, a graduate seminar in international security right now, and we've talked about the Ukraine-Russia war quite a bit because it's emblematic of a lot of theories that political scientists have about why wars start, why they continue for a long time, the role of alliances, all of these kinds of things factor into a lot of different processes that go into wars. Wars are complicated events, and nobody likes them, but they do happen, and so they are really important to study and understand. And I'll say with that point, just to kind of link back with what I said earlier too, the reason why people like me study things like conflict and political violence is because ultimately what we're interested in is peace. We want to understand peace, but the first step is to understand conflict. And so hopefully, as part of a lot of academic research, policy work, and then activism can all kind of bridge together, come together, and promote a more peaceful world in the long run.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And what I love about that too is that you've primarily been focused here. Your studies have all taken place in the Midwest, and we think so much about flyover country and how things are happening on the East or West Coast, but you're able to study things like international relations or state politics or political philosophy. Those are all different kind of aspects that we're going to continue to peel back this onion that is political science as we talk to other faculty members. But we just had a conversation with Dr. Wade last month about her and focusing on research about political violence in the communities, and particularly things like recidivism rates and prisons, and sort of how you can affect change through policies at the community and state level. And you're looking at it more from like a global perspective and looking at those ideas of political violence and civil wars. And I guess less of a question, just a commentary to say that it's great that at a smaller program, like you were saying, almost equivalent to the size of your undergrad at Truman State, that you're able to interact with your faculty in a way that allow you to be able to explore lots of different ideas and thoughts. And so I know it's early in your first semester here with us, but how have your interactions been with the students, whether that be in the department or any kind of like general education type courses that you've been teaching here at UIS?
Yeah, they've been really great. I've been wildly impressed with the students that I've been teaching. This semester, as I mentioned earlier, I'm teaching a master's course online on international relations with kind of an international security bend to it. And those discussions have been amazing. I have kind of a synchronous component and asynchronous component. And whether they be kind of discussion board, online participation, or participation through Zoom, right? I've really enjoyed all the conversations that I've had. I have found that I've learned a lot in these discussions too. So the student profile among the master's students has been great. And then I'm also teaching a course of just first-year students, actually. It's a first-year seminar course called Global Culture in College-Age Youth. And part of my approach to that course is to kind of give some context, right, of kind of what youth means in different cultures, right? While also teaching about what culture is and what identity means, and contextualizing things. Also, some youths that we kind of learn about have been either victims of or experienced the legacies of conflict, right? All of these kinds of things, understanding kind of broad scale context and how that affects individual level lived experiences, I think is a useful way to kind of start learning about college, thinking about your own experiences and other people's experiences critically. And whether you're a history major, political science major, biology major, I think actually most of my students in that class are biology majors. That's useful for everybody. And so my hope, though, is to also expose these students also to some kind of big picture concepts in the humanities, social sciences, particularly political science, to get people to think a little bit outside their majors, outside their degrees, and expose them to other perspectives, whether they want to stick with their degree or program or not. I want to make sure that they have a broad-based understanding of different disciplines. I had one student, in fact, who made a comment in that class about how he is a biology major, I believe, and he said, I enjoy the content in this class because this is stuff that I just wouldn't get in my other courses. And once again, that's such a important part of being in an institution like this, where you can take a lot of different classes, especially in your first, second year, broaden your horizons in that way and find your interests if you're not really sure what you want to kind of pursue in the long run anyway.
And as someone that went from the sciences into political science, you kind of are almost kind of now on the opposite side of that journey potentially. And I'm actually teaching a first year seminar class this year as well, called Understanding Political Media. And so get to talk a bit about politics in there as well. And it has been really neat to see like that people aren't necessarily in a position where they are they expected to take this class in their first semester, but it does allow for some broadened horizons and things like that. I'll tell you that this is going to seem like a humble brag, but the thing I will take away from this class, we did kind of a midterm check-in, and at least one of my students said that they weren't planning on voting in the future, and then now they do plan to vote, which just made my heart happy, you know. But it's great to be able to have those interactions with those kinds of students and to be able to work with them. Now, I do want to dive in deeper a little bit to your true research, what your dissertation was on, and what it is that really you focused on as you were finishing up your dissertation, doing all the defense and everything else, because that just happened last year for you. So give us a sense of what your research interests really are.
Yeah, so I have pretty wide-ranging interests. You know, all of them kind of are under the umbrella of political violence and conflict. My dissertation was actually about alliances between rebel groups. So sometimes, right, we think about a civil war, maybe like the American Civil War, where kind of like the Confederate States seceded from the United States. And so that was kind of one large rebellion. But in actually most contemporary civil wars in the world, if you think of Syria, Colombia, Iraq, Burma, many other countries, there are more than one rebel group fighting against the government at the same time. And you can imagine this causes a lot of extra complicated politics from the rebels' perspective, as well as the government's perspective, right? Rebels have to then decide, well, we maybe have a common enemy, but does that mean we should work together? Maybe we also might choose to fight one another. Maybe we form an alliance. Maybe we ignore each other, right? This is a strategic dilemma that changes, right, over the course of a conflict. But these conflicts are really interesting to me because they also tend to be the most deadly, the longest lasting wars, and certainly harder to end. And so my dissertation examined the kind of cooperative arrangements that rebels make with one another. And one reason why I kind of was motivated to do this was because there's a lot of research in international relations about, states forming alliances with each other, right? Like NATO, the Warsaw Pact. But even though there's a little bit of recognition that sometimes rebel groups will cooperate with one another, we don't really know what those alliances actually look like. So I went into this, right, many years project of trying to pair up all combinations of rebel groups across all conflicts in the world and determine how they cooperated. And if possible, get actual alliance kind of documents or texts that they use to kind of forge a relationship with one another. And then I kind of put together all this data and analyze why groups not just cooperate with one another, but also how they cooperate. Sometimes they, for example, will just kind of work together, do some joint attacks. Sometimes they'll like write down an agreement. They'll even agree to having some kind of supreme kind of military commander, right, that oversees the military forces of multiple groups. And those are kind of surprising because usually, right, when you think of a rebellion or a context where there are multiple rebel groups fighting against the government at the same time, you don't imagine a scenario where one group says, let's work together, try to overthrow the government, and then when we win, you get to be in charge, right? This is kind of complicated, but it happens a lot. And one kind of descriptive takeaway that I found that kind of serves as a motivation for understanding this variation itself is that those types of alliances, when groups kind of really come together, they agree on like a single leader, or they create kind of an institution, a council, something to really run the alliance. Those groups are never outright defeated, or I should say almost never outright defeated by the government. Sometimes they settle in a peace agreement, but they never just lose. And that's powerful, right? When you find things like that aren't just correlations, but almost weirdly constant results, that suggests that this phenomenon is there's something to it. So that was kind of part of my dissertation. But I'm also interested in things like when rebel groups are fighting against the government, sometimes they control territory, and then they try to act like states too. They try to govern. And so what are the kind of, how do civilians experience rebel governance is another area of my research agenda. And then again, I'm also interested in some factors that lead to international conflict. So I'm currently working on an article that hopefully will be published soon on how right-wing populists in democratic countries actually tend to initiate conflicts, international conflicts at a higher frequency than other types of leaders. So again, wide umbrella, but if students are interested in conflict or want to take courses on conflict or want to do projects, get engaged in research or something like that related to political violence or war, I'm happy to point them in the right direction or work with you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And there's so many opportunities to be able to interact with your faculty, especially in the master's programs and especially working on those closures, whether that be comprehensive exams or going the thesis route, particularly the thesis route, because it's needing so much more methodology and everything else. I guess I should ask you, as we start to consider wrapping this up, you likely put out applications to many different institutions. And so I'm wondering, we always are asked as students or alumni, why did we end up choosing UIS? But from your perspective, through the interview process, why is it that you decided to make your first stop in this illustrious career that you're going to have? Why UIS?
That's a great question. There are a lot of reasons. You're right that I sent out applications to a number of different places. I had interviews at a lot of different places. But ultimately, there were some things about UIS that I think makes it pretty special, especially for me. The first thing is, like I mentioned earlier, at least in this point in my career, what I want to do is teach students in kind of these smaller, more intimate settings. I want to be able to teach students in small classrooms, students who are incredibly diverse in their backgrounds, but who are here to kind of better themselves, learn about different kinds of topics. UIS is a special place for that because especially of the class sizes, I like enjoying kind of having close relationships with students, whether they be grad students or undergrads. And so the size of the school is actually really attractive to me, in part because that was what kind of motivated me to find my career, my interests, my passions when I was an undergrad. I was afraid of getting lost at a really, really big institution, and that's why I wanted a smaller institution. And so right now, UIS is a place that I can kind of give back and participate in that experience, and hopefully I can shape some young minds in this setting as well. I'm also originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa originally. Again, I went to school in Missouri. I did my PhD graduate school out in Pennsylvania, so that was closer to the East Coast. I have many friends in Pittsburgh who consider themselves Midwesterners, so we had many arguments about that. I don't think that counts because Pennsylvania technically touches the Atlantic Ocean, and it was originally one of the 13 colonies. So I don't consider that the Midwest, but the point is that I love my time out there, but this is the kind of culture that I grew up in. This was my upbringing, and so I wanted to come back to a place that is closer to home, what I know, and hopefully, again, shape young minds in that kind of environment.
Now, one of the other things that I kind of constantly am coming back to when we discuss these different episodes, whether it be students or also faculty, is that we do have such a diverse faculty in terms of areas of expertise within political science. And so I guess my final question to you is just to ask you how your interactions have been with other faculty members since you've arrived, and sort of what that on that side of the table, how that's been going for you as well.
It's been great. This department, has about 10 faculty members, I believe, and their interests vary so widely, which is nice for the students because they can get exposed to lots of different perspectives and expertise. But I think it's maybe something that students don't really know is that when you have a faculty like that with different diverse interests, just because we all have different levels of expertise doesn't mean we don't talk to each other about our interests. And in fact, it's those kind of collaborative interactions that can produce some really interesting research, right? So Dr. Transu does a lot with like political psychology, public opinion. The research that I was talking about earlier about international conflict, we did these survey experiments in India and Japan, right? That touches on these ideas of like how rhetoric affects people's willingness to endorse the use of force. And that's a political psychology argument, right? And methodologically, we can also speak to one another as well. Dr. Skinner, for example, is interested in migration, refugees, and refugee politics is clearly linked to things like conflict and violence and war,
Right.
which is the stuff that I am interested in, right? So we can have really interesting, fruitful discussions about that too. Dr. Oktay studies foreign policy, right? Clearly, we have some linkages there. Dr. Crocker is a comparative politics expert. And, although I teach international relations, I focus on civil wars, which are technically wars within countries. Usually that falls under the umbrella of international relations, which usually is about relationships between countries. But it's really kind of a comparative politics type phenomenon. And so all that's to say that, my interactions with the faculty here have been great, both personally and intellectually. And I'm really excited over the next few years to see where we can either collaborate on research, collaborate on teaching. I've definitely got a lot of great kind of advice. We've exchanged advice about teaching new courses. We have lots of new ideas and new courses that we want to offer. I'm teaching one new course in the spring, by the way. It's a topics course on rebellion and political violence. Hopefully that'll make it into the course catalog soon. But I've talked with other faculty about some new first-year seminar course ideas too. So yeah, I'm just excited to be a part of it. Everybody's so enthusiastic about what they do, and it's just an honor to be part of this group.
That's wonderful. So my last question is to turn the tables around on you and say, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to mention to prospective students or to anybody else that might be listening?
Yeah, I guess I'll maybe just throw out some advice, which is, based on some of the themes we've talked about today, especially in your first couple of years, if you're an incoming student or a new student, this is your time to explore different areas, and you might be very surprised at where your interests end up being. You may come into college and think that you definitely want to do this one thing. If you commit yourself to that really early, that can have some advantages, but it also might be limiting if you don't expose yourself to different issues as well. And so take diverse classes, broaden your mind, especially in those first few years before you seek to specialize. And the other thing I'll say is it is really important to develop relationships with your professors because your professors want you to succeed. They want to support you in your careers, whether that's through letters of recommendation or just kind of orienting you towards the materials or information that would be helpful to you. But also faculty members are always looking for talented students, passionate students who can help them with their research. And so if you're interested in doing research with anybody in the political science department, but for me, I can speak to issues related to conflict and international relations, come and talk to me. I have my office door open quite a bit. I'd love to just talk about issues. But research with professors is a way for you to also learn new skills. And also maybe you can learn something that you can get involved in projects that other students aren't getting experience doing. And so I would just suggest that being in college is a unique time in your life. And that means that you want to make it as unique of an experience as you possibly can. Broaden your mind, expose yourself to different issues, different areas, different disciplines, but also try to learn new skills, develop relationships with professors, and that's going to make your experience just that much better.
That's wonderful. What a great message to end on, and really looking forward to more and more conversations with you as your time here at UIS continues on. And welcome to Springfield, welcome to the faculty, and welcome to UIS.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
That was just a wonderful conversation. I learned quite a bit because I will tell you that in my program, when I was going through UIS, I really focused more on campaigns, elections, American politics, public opinion, political psychology. Those were sort of my areas that I decided to specialize in. And I'll tell you that international relations is always something that I wish I would have learned more about. So I feel like maybe I should take Dr. Bolte's upcoming class this spring and be able to jump back in and try to learn a bit more about political conflict, because of course we have these international issues that continue to arise throughout our world every single day, and they're having an impact not only within their borders but to the broader world and this sense of togetherness that we have as humans. And so it's very interesting to hear how he studies that as a means to hopefully drive and get to this ideal peace between different nations. And so I'm very fascinated about his research, and I love that he has joined the faculty here, because I think that we'll continue to broaden the spectrum that we have as faculty here and in the program in the School of Politics and International Affairs. I'm really enjoying these podcasts. I hope you're enjoying listening to these different faculty members, different students. I'm excited to continue on this series and to talk to at least one faculty member per month as we continue to move throughout the school year here. And I'm just excited that we're able to bring this to you as potentially a prospective student or someone that is an alumni of this school and you're wanting to listen back and hear sort of some of the different faculty perspectives that we have to offer here at UIS. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me directly. My email address is dmcfa4@uis.edu. You can also reach out to the College of Public Affairs and Education as well. And as I mentioned, I'm an online coordinator here, but that doesn't mean that I can't help on-ground students as well. We can certainly get you pointed in the right direction should you be interested in questions about your application or what you might be doing as far as next steps to get you enrolled in UIS and be able to interact with these wonderful faculty that we have here. I think that's all that I have for this. I will be back with another faculty spotlight in the relatively near future. But for now, I hope you just have a wonderful day or night or whenever you happen to be listening. I just hope you're having a great time.